highlight and delete them.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the OSP Toronto Exchange virtual session. Before I continue with the presentation, just know that today's session will be recorded. Today's topic is on cybersecurity and human factor. My name is Kun Lee, and I will be the moderator for today's event. OSP Exchange Hub is to expand its reach across Ontario by providing a community gathering point for its members to share, discuss, and contribute to the OSP initiatives and priority advocacy, professional development, and more. On behalf of all OSP members, thank you to our partners for your incredible and ongoing support of the Ontario's engineering community. Please note that the chat session will be monitored by OSP staff member, and please type your questions for the speaker into the chat box, and they will be answered by our speaker at the very end of the event. Please mute your mic during the event. So I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. So we're coming to you from Toronto, which is the Dish with One Spoon territory. We respectively acknowledge the past and present traditional stewards of the land and their unique role in the life of region. Toronto is on the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. We pay our respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play on this territory. And welcome to today's speaker event presented by Changi Sadr. We will learn why it's important to understand that most cyber attacks are targeting you, not your system. Changi Sadr is a subject matter expert in cybersecurity, and he has many years of professional experience and is a licensed engineer in Ontario. He also serves on many different volunteering committees. We will cover some basic statistic information on cyber attacks and common type used by hackers. Attackers often rely on human emotion to carry out their deeds, and this is why it's important to be aware of their tactics. Without further delay, we would now like to begin the session. So to you, Changi.
Thank you, Kun, for the introduction, and thank you, OSP, for giving me this opportunity. But probably I have a question for Mazlina before I start. I understand that we have about 19 people registered. Would you like to wait for a couple minutes or want me to start?
You can get started.
Okay. Because we have only basically 6 people or 5 people attended. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, good evening, everyone. The title of presentation tonight is Cybersecurity and Human Factor. And throughout this presentation, I would like to get the answer to this question. Why is it crucial to understand that most cyber attackers target you, not your systems? That is the question for this presentation. I start with some statistic information about cybersecurity. Verizon is one of the major service providers in US with a global footprint. They have over 200 data centers across the globe, 7 data centers in Canada. And Verizon claims that over 80% of internet traffic in US passes over their network. For past 15 years, for every year, Verizon creates a report called Data Breach Investigation Report. And based on the total number of reported incidents and the data breaches, and then provide some findings each year based on the number of incidents and the data breaches. This information that I'm going to present to you is from their 2020 DBIR report, which is based on over 150,000 incidents and about 4,000 data breaches. Very quickly, the difference between incident and data breach. Incident is when a cyber attack happens, and data breach is when some damages happen to the organization. Not all incidents end up to a data breach, because many of the incidents are blocked or detected by the organizations and the security postures that they have. So that's why you see the number of incidents are much, much higher than number of data breaches. So these charts indicates the global finding of the 2020 report. As you can see, it says 72% of breaches involved large business victims. Large business organization, based on definition, is an organization with over 1,000 employees. So when it says 72% of breaches happen for large business victims, of course, the larger the business is, the more attractive it is for hackers, because of the more financial gain that they can get. But that doesn't mean that small businesses or even residential users are safe. Everyone is in danger of cyber attacks. So based on this report, it says 58% of victims had personal data compromised. So when data breach happens, within the data breach, in most cases,
Sorry,
personal
Chingiz.
data. Sorry,
Someone in
yes.
the comment box said, can you advance the slides so you can see when you're speaking?
I have. That was the question I asked. I am on the charts. Does it?
Oh, we can't see the people. We can't see that.
Okay. Then yeah, that was what. Then I believe I have to go on screen. Share the screen, then share this one. Do you see it now?
Yep, now we can.
Okay. So these are the charts from 2020 DBIR report of Verizon that I mentioned, and 72% of breaches have for large organizations and 58% for organizations that lost the personal data. And also this report indicates that 86% of breaches were financially motivated. The most motivation for cyber attacks are financial gain. Of course, that 86%, majority of them. And the other 4 cases, that's interesting that you can see. For example, it says 22% of breaches involve phishing. And as you know, phishing is basically which can happen through email, text, or social media, is to somehow make the users click on the malicious file and get their systems infected. 27% ransomware, 37% stolen credit, again, lost personal data, which are stolen, and then those stolen credits are used for secondary attacks. And 43% web applications is when the users click on a web link and they go to a malicious website, which collects the personal information. This is another chart from the same report indicating the type of the cyber attacks, the variety of the attacks over last 5 years from 2015 to 2020. For example, you can see that malware, which in 2015 was the on top of the list of the attacks, if you follow the link, you can see that in 2020 is right at the bottom. This indicates the variety of cyber attacks are changing, specifically when we are talking about 2020. As you know, 2020 was completely the lockdown year. We were in the COVID system, and most of the users were online, and virtual meetings, and most businesses were virtual. So that's why you see the change in variety of the cyber attacks. Or the other one, Trojan attacks, which was number third on top in 2015, and in 16 and 17 was number one. In 2020 is third from the bottom. So the type is changed. But when you go to social phishing or social engineering in phishing attacks, which was number two on top, and it's toggled between second and third, for 2019 and 2020 is number one, phishing. Again, for the reason that I mentioned, more virtual work, more online work. And you can see hacking, use of stolen credits, again, is number second on top in 2020. The other one, error, misdelivery, and error misconfiguration are the number 4 and number 5 on top in 2020. So you can see that the variety of the attacks are changed and are mostly depending on people. When we are talking misdelivery and misconfiguration, we are talking about human error. Of course, we have some configuration done by machines or by codes, but most of them are being done by people. So this indicates the general change of the variety of the attacks that are happening. This is from the same report, but for North America, not for global scale. In North America, over 18,000 incidents and about 920 data breaches were analyzed. And these are the findings from those number of incidents and those number of data breaches. You can see that 80% of the attacks are happening in North America through phishing. That's a huge number. 80% of attacks are happening through phishing. And you can see another huge number. We have 80% for use of stolen credits. When you say use of stolen credits, that means somehow hackers have gotten access to some information about people and then use those information for secondary attack and for more gains. And then you can see misdelivery and misconfiguration, about 35%, 30%. And you can see about 75% for web application, which I mentioned to you is clicking on the malicious web link, or maybe downloading different files from the web, which are categorized as web application. And then you can see another big number here, about 60% for privilege abuse, data mishandling, and possession abuse. These three exactly are touching people. Again, privilege abuse. Privilege means, say, for example, administrators in each business, they have privilege to have access to entire network. And when it says privilege abuse, that means those people, either by mistake or on purpose, they are making some mistakes and errors which end up to an incident and data breach, or mishandling, or possession abuse. So now I want to define to you what network is and what is our attack surface or threat surface. Network, any point of your business that your data is there in any of the three states of data is part of your network. Consider data. We have three different states for data. First, data in motion. That's where data is transferring between point A and B. Data at rest. That's when data is sitting in a storage, in a memory. And the third state is when is under process. That means is being manipulated by a system. So when you think that data has only these three states, so whenever your data is in one of these three states, anywhere is part of your network, even if you are connected to a cloud. If you are connected to a internet, public cloud, or even private cloud, you have some specific the cloud providers, which they can provide you proprietary cloud, which is called private cloud. Even if you are connected to cloud and your data is going to cloud, that portion of the cloud which your data is there is part of your network. So that's the definition of the network. So what is attack surface? The set of all points on your network accessible to an unauthorized user is your surface attack. Anywhere within your network that an unauthorized user can get access to the data is part of your surface attack, which is basically your vulnerability. And I will talk about vulnerabilities more and open it up what that is and the other information about it. What can be attacked? Email accounts, computer software, hardware, VPNs, virtual private network, firewalls, cloud system. I mentioned if you are connected to cloud system, your network is there. IoT device. OT is operational technology. Mobile phones, application servers, databases. Basically, anything with network connectivity can be attacked. So anything, nothing connected to a network is safe. Think this way. Now I have here a question that you can ask yourself and think of an answer. And I have 5 answers here, which you can think of those 5 answers. The question is, when an attacker has decided to attack you, what have they identified? So this is a basic question. You should ask yourself, what do they have from you when they attack you? Your LinkedIn or social media posts? Your domain was in a data dump from another breach? Nothing, you are just a number. Your business is likely to have a lot of cash in hand. Your IP addresses are known. Which one do you think is the right answer? I just pause here for a few seconds for you to think of this question and think of those answers that I mentioned here. That which one you think, if the attackers want to attack you, what information they have. If you have thought of answer C, nothing, you are just a number, is a correct one. Basically, attackers identify your vulnerabilities and attack. They don't care if you are a large business, if you are a small business, you have lots of cash in hand, you don't have any cash, you have lots of debts, they don't care. What they care is to identify your vulnerabilities and then they attack. So that's the main point for us to remember. What are the key concepts? Attackers focus on what they can access. As I mentioned to you, you have an attack surface, any point in your network that can be accessed by someone is part of your attack surface. And attackers focus on what they can access to. This is your network surface, as I mentioned to you. This is why email is such a popular target, because the email addresses are usually known. They are listed in many other places. They are accessible easily by attackers. So they can get access to your email address. They can send phishing emails to your email address. That's why it's very popular. The other popular part of your network is your perimeter or edge of your network. Why the edge of your network is more popular for the attackers? Because that, the name is there. That's edge. That's where your equipment is connected directly to the internet. That is edge of your network. Like what? Like VPN, like proxy server. VPN, again, I repeat, virtual private network, is a server that you connect to it, and then you go outside world through that VPN server. So that VPN server becomes your edge server. Or proxy server is a server that sometimes people do not want to have their own IP addresses known by the world. They define a proxy server, and that proxy server sits in the edge, and then internet connects to the proxy server, and then proxy servers talks to your network. Then proxy server become your edge equipment, and that's why it's popular for the attackers. What are the key concepts? There are some predictions that attackers make about you in general. What are the predictions? You have a network configuration you do not fully understand. Whatever the business becomes larger, the IT becomes very complicated. And there are many, many servers. And most of employees do not have the understanding of the IT network, do not have the understanding of the network configuration, how these servers, how these equipment, firewalls, VPN, and other equipments are configured. And because they do not understand it, they may do something, even by mistake, to open up a gate for the attackers. That's part of the predictions that attackers make about your business. You have a shadow IT, you do not know about it. What is a shadow IT? In large organizations, there are many, many different departments, and they have a central IT department which serves the entire organization. But because departments have some specific requirements, the central IT may not be able to provide that specific feature to the department, then what they do, the department creates its own IT, small IT, within the bigger IT. That small IT is called shadow IT. And sometimes this shadow IT becomes like an island. And although the central IT is very secure, and basically the administrators take care of that, but that shadow IT, smaller IT within the department, not within the organization, works like an island and can open up a gate to the attackers. Software and hardware manufacturers usually think of the ease of use. It's user-friendly, it's beautiful, it's cheap, and you know, other aspects of their products, and they think of security at the very end. From the security point of view, the best security is security by design. That means if your software and hardware has this cybersecurity into their design from the beginning, that's the most secure type of security. But if cybersecurity is added later, it usually has some compatibility issues, some matching issues, some syncing issues, and that's the point that attackers think of that and use on their own benefits. And finally, the main part, there are humans configuring your network, humans are using your network, and humans can make errors in judgments. That's another major prediction that attackers do. Regardless of what type of technology you have, how much expensive and secure your technology is, your equipment is, your hardware and software is, still people are using it, and people can make mistake. That's another prediction for attackers. So what are the main causes? Our attack surface is attractive. That means we have some vulnerabilities within our network, within our attack surface, and those vulnerabilities are attractive to the attackers. The vast majority of cyber incidents occurred because the basic elements of cybersecurity weren't followed. This is a quote that exactly I copied and pasted from these reports here. These are the reference of the reports that I have used for these sentences here, or these comments. Attackers have more visibility to our network than we do. That's a very the interesting and important point. Usually, the network administrators or IT staff within the organizations have visibility through their network for how their network is working, the function, the features, and how the users are being served by the network. But attackers think of vulnerabilities and they look for vulnerabilities, so they have more visibility to our networks than our own administrators. So these are the major points that we as an individual and as a business owner, as an employee of a business, we should pay attention to and remind for these points that are the major points that attackers think of. What are the vulnerabilities? I mentioned to you that we saw in an earlier slide that when we define the attack surface, every point or any point of your network that is accessible by an unauthorized user is your vulnerability. What can be considered as a vulnerability? Technology, policy, process, people. When you think of these 4 items that I have mentioned here, each item can be a vulnerability in a general sense when you think of. When we think of technology, usually comes in different pieces, usually from different vendors. Then the matter of interoperability between different vendors, different equipment. So that's a vulnerability with technology. Hardware, software needs patching and other things. We will see later that very easily attackers can attack. Policy. If we do not have a right security policy, then that policy can be a vulnerability, and attackers use that weakness within the policy. Process. When we have a policy, we need a process to operate based on the policy. If our processes are not properly defined or are not enforced by the management, by the employees, or are not properly understood, then those processes can be vulnerabilities. And people, I mentioned to you, people, doesn't matter how trained they are, doesn't matter how skilled they are, they have bad days, they have good days, they make a mistake. So people can be considered as vulnerabilities. So now the question is, which one is more impactful in security breaches? You saw earlier that only in 2020, we had more than 157,000 security incidents. And those are security incidents that are reported, not the real numbers, because many organizations do not report security incidents because of their reputations, because of their customer base, because of losing revenue and other things, they do not report. So those over 157,000 incidents were what reported for 2020. So the question is, which one is more impactful? There is a quote from Gartner. Gartner says people directly affect security outcomes more than technology, policies, or processes. That means within these 4 vulnerabilities that I mentioned to you, people are more impactful. Perfect cybersecurity protection is not possible, resulting in people frequently on the front lines. This is a good question for you to think of. Why a perfect cybersecurity protection is not possible? Because of people. I mentioned to you, doesn't matter how secure your network is, still people are using it. People are configuring it. People are making those changes. So because people are sitting in the front line and using those technologies, policies, and processes, then no cybersecurity solution is perfect. What are the vulnerabilities? Gartner's 2020 Rethink the Security and Risk Strategy report, based on this report, it says security professionals often focus on the threats and breaches that dominate the headlines. Say, for example, in the morning, you listen to a news and it says, we heard recently, Marriott Hotel was attacked again for the 3rd time a few weeks ago. Say I'm a security or administrator of an IT, and I read at the news that, Marriott Hotel was attacked, and the reason was this. I go search for those specific cases in my own network. And that is the bad point of the administrators. Administrators should think of their own vulnerabilities, not what mentioned for Marriott Hotel. Marriott Hotel was attacked because of its own vulnerabilities, which may not be the same as our network vulnerabilities. So that's one point. The second point, zero-day vulnerabilities accounted for approximately 0.4% of incidents in the past decade. Many organizations are kind of afraid, and some of them, they are, you know, they have kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They are very scared of zero-day attacks because we hear at the news about zero-day attack. What is a zero-day attack? Zero-day attack means a new attack that is created just today, and you do not have any solution or any protection for that. That is a zero-day attack. But based on the report of Gartner, you can see it says only 0.4% of attacks are happening because of zero-day attacks. So it is not really a very important point to focus on. And based on Verizon 2019 DBIR, it says 94% of breaches start with attacks targeting people via email. And also in 2020, for North America, in earlier slide, I showed you that 80% of attacks in North America happened in 2020 based on phishing. So here it says 94% in 2019. So it is very important to pay attention to the role of human in the entire organization and the entire cybersecurity incidents. Defenders don't focus on people, attackers do. As I mentioned to you, usually the security administrators think of what happened in the market. They think of what is the most popular vulnerability in the news, or some companies were attacked because of that. And they think of those vulnerabilities of their own network, not really their own people, not really their own vulnerabilities. But defenders focus on that, and they think of those vulnerabilities and people, of course, about as the main vulnerability. Small and medium businesses are even more at risk comparing to larger organizations. We saw that it says 72% of breaches happen for large organizations, but that means small and businesses are also, small and medium businesses are also at the danger of attacks. But small and medium businesses are even more at risk comparing to larger organizations. Why? Because, first of all, they face the same threats affecting the larger organizations because they lack resources of an enterprise, people, process, technology, and of course, money. They don't have enough resources to, for example, to hire a specific security expert. Maybe they hire one IT person to take care of their security posture as well. They do not have time to invest in developing cybersecurity expertise. That's a small business. They want to focus on their revenue. They want to focus on their growth and their customer base. And that makes them more vulnerable for the attacks comparing to the larger organizations. I have some examples of some cyber attacks in the previous years, and I have specifically selected different cyber attacks to show you the different aspect of cyber attacks. For example, in 2010, small dentistry office in Springfield, Missouri, was attacked only for $200,000. You may think of, well, just a small dentistry office. Who attacks a small dentistry office? As you can see, it was reported, and $200,000 was lost here. In 2015, the Ukrainian blackout for their power grid put 250,000 people for 2 days in blackout. That's the scope of attack that can happen at the country level. As small as a dentistry office, as big as a country. In 2016, CFO and CEO of a company in Austria, the company named FACC, fired because they lost $47 million through phishing. And because you can see the word spear phishing in the bracket, because the phishing was specifically targeted by name to the company. That's the difference between phishing and spear phishing. Regular phishing, which can be a general email sent to a bunch of people, it's phishing. But when it targets specific people by name, it's spear phishing. And when it targets the executives of a company, it's called whaling, big fish, because they get big money. In 2017, probably you heard, because Equifax was basically, the attack was very, very important, and it sounded like a bomb. 147 million clients were impacted by this attack. And the reason for the attack, the administrators delayed in patching the server. That's it. Very simple. Say, for example, if you have a Windows software on your server, Microsoft announces that we have a patch released. When they announce a patch is released, that means there were some specific vulnerabilities within their software which they fixed by the patch. And because it was announced, all the attackers know which piece of software needs to be patched and what is the vulnerability. So what is the role of the administrators? To patch the servers as soon as the patch has been released. But in this case, they delayed, and within the time that the patch was released and the time that they patched the server were attacked, and Equifax lost 147 million clients' data. And in 2018, the city of Atlanta enters into emergency contracts with over 5 million for ransomware. And ransomware, just quickly, is a type of attack which locks your entire system. And then they ask for some money, for ransom money, to unlock your system. Or sometimes they encrypt a very important file, which is kind of like a master file. You need that to run your business. When it's encrypted, you don't have access to it, and you have to pay the money. So these are just some examples that I mentioned to you, that it can be as small as just a dentistry office, as big as a country. IBM, in their 2016 report, they mentioned that 60% of all cybersecurity attacks are carried out by insiders. Insiders means people who are somehow related within the organization. And then they defined this insiders as inadvertent actors, 16%, and the malicious insiders, 45%. Inadvertent actors are phishing manipulation, basically people who by mistake opened up an email and file and clicked on the link, or misconfiguration, again by mistake. Mispermission, that's the privilege abuse. You remember I mentioned about privilege abuse? Mispermission, a person who does not have a permission to access to, say, for example, a specific database, because of some mistakes, this person get access to the database, and because he's not expert with database, make a mistake, and boom, opens up a gate for attacks. Or misaddressing emails. Malicious insiders, employees who are not happy, former employees, they are dismissed for whatever reason, they are not happy. Contractors, they are not happy with the contract. And business partners, they are not happy with the partner, with the partnership that they have. They may use the information they have, the credentials, the information that they have to get access to the network, and then make attacks. What is the motivation? Financial gain is the main one. Curiosity, convenience, revenge, fun, error. For example, that the fun part, it's very interesting for you to know. A few years ago, a student of University of Calgary hacked the main server of the university and locked server completely. And then when everyone panicked in the university that they don't have access to the main server, and now we have only a few days left to the opening of the semester and other things, and then sent a message that I just wanted to do this to see if I can for fun, and then opened up, unlocked the server. He could have asked for money, but he didn't. So basically just for fun. People are mostly the target. Phishing attacks. I mentioned to you that 80% of attacks in North America and about 40% of total attacks in a global aspect are based on phishing. So these are two examples of phishing attacks. One of them happens during 2007 to 2010. For all the Microsoft Windows users, there was a malicious file called Zeus, and this malicious file coming to emails through Windows users, and then a Trojan malicious file was coming with the email, with the link, and then how Trojan works. You know the story of the Trojan horse, right? The Trojan malicious file works the same way. Trojan malicious file comes with the email or the attachment or the link, sits in your computer, and based on the programming that it has, in some specific date and time, or by some other triggers, such as clicking on one specific application, opening up a specific application, it triggers the file, and then file gets activated, and then it starts to impact your system based on the type of malicious programming that it has. And over 100 million were lost because of this malicious file, which happened only through phishing attacks. And another example was in 2015 that you know about the emails of the Democratic National Committee of US, that 60,000 sensitive emails were exposed just because of the phishing. One person clicked on a link which he or she was not supposed to do. And then all those sensitive emails went through WikiLeaks, and because it was political matter, of course, it was very impactful to the U.S. and many other countries who were in relation for those specific emails. So, talking phishing attacks, phishing attack does not attack your technology, does not attack your equipment, doesn't care if you are a Windows user, doesn't care if you are a Macintosh user, a mobile, Samsung, Apple, doesn't care. Phishing attacks your emotions, such as curiosity, sadness, fear, greed, what if desire, and many more. And what happens when they trigger your emotion? By triggering the emotion, there are some biological responses that happens in our body. Yeah, adrenaline and cortisol goes to the hormones go to the blood, and then it raises the blood pressure and increased heart rate. Those are the biological responses happens when our emotions are triggered. And by triggering our
Hi.
emotions,
Sorry, Chinese
no,
for interrupting.
no problem.
If you could just wrap up your session as we're approaching the time for the presentation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I was completely in it. I didn't look at the watch at the time. Okay.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay. They attack your emotions, and I have some examples here. For curiosity, on Facebook, they send you a picture, and you want to open up the picture, and it says download the extension file. If you click on it, it will impact you. Greed, that's for e-transfer. And this is the right file. It shows my name. It shows the email, which is coming from Intrac, and it shows my name because the money is sent to me. Look at this email. Is similar look, but this is a phishing email. It comes from person. It doesn't have my name, but it says you have received $1,900. So it triggers my greed emotion to click. Oh wow, I have $1,900, and you click, and boom, your system is infected. What if I just these are the what if example that's like ransomware. It says your camera was on, and I have taken some pictures and movies, and if you don't pay $1,000 email to me by 48 hours, send the money to this Bitcoin Valley address. In this case, I Googled the Bitcoin Valley address, and as you can see, 112 cases were reported on this one. And for affection, these are examples. I just, because of the time, I passed this one because I want to go to solution and give you the solution. For this one also, I pass here. This is a site. It's called the free phishing quiz site. You as an individual or as a company, you can use this site. And this site gives you some examples of phishing emails. For example, this is an example I've taken from that site. It says Yahoo email, but when you look at the URL here, it's not Yahoo. So this is one indication that this is a phishing email. And the second indication, it says to be deleted. It wants to make you, scared of losing Yahoo account and deleting on it. So how to avoid phishing attacks? look away from a screen, check sender, examine message, hover mouse over links, verify request by calling or contacting the person from the information you have. If it's a fish, delete completely, don't click on it, don't open it. Remember that the attackers try to give you a bad feeling from deleting the message. What should we do? That's the main point. I try to go through it in 5 minutes. Make attackers, we should make our attack surface smaller. You remember the vulnerabilities, technologies, policies, processes, and people. Implement a concise policy for each major threat, such as phishing, the denial of service attacks. Policies should be very simple, written as a 9th grade. They must be reinforced directly. Implement a proper and accurate risk analysis. Buy insurance if you can. That's kind of mitigation. Make the accepted risk as low as possible because you want to make your attack surface smaller. Implement a process for each function. Prepare procedures and guidelines. Make sure they are understood and applied. Get visibility into your network. Monitor your data in its all 3 states. Even if you're connected to the cloud, make sure that you have visibility through your cloud connectivity. Ensure you are using the security features afforded to you already, such as multi-factor authentication, removing unused features and services, patching and updates and backup. Get a password manager and have it used by your employees at work and at home for work. Also you can provide tablet or laptop to your employees, or make employees use VPN to connect to the office if they are outside the office. And for people, the most important one, implement an effective setup program. What is setup program? Security, education, training, and awareness. And this is the recommendation from IC Square for setup program. Identify the program scope, identify training staff, identify target audience, prepare management and employees for training, administer for the program, monitor and maintain the program, evaluate and redefine and modify. Remember, effective cybersecurity doesn't need to be complicated, expensive, or time-consuming. That means you need to focus on your vulnerabilities and try to make your attack surface smaller. That's it. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for the wonderful and informative presentation by Cengiz. Unfortunately, today we won't have time for questions, but you can always reach out to Cengiz, I'm sure, if you have some question regarding his presentation. And I'd like to thank everyone, the audience, for attending this session. Before we go, I would like to talk about 2 events organized by OSPE. We have the engineering conference, which will occur in November 3rd, and it has programming features with 4 sessions on engineers in a digital world. And it also includes a session on Cengiz, so you'll be able to see him there. And furthermore, there is a digital transformation course offered by OSPE. It's a certificate program which equips students to adapt to technological change and lead digital transformation in their workplace. The course is delivered in partnership with University of Waterloo, and OSPE members receive 10% off their tuition. And as a side note, all guests will receive a follow-up email with more information regarding the conference and the digital transformation course I just talked about. Again, I like to thank everybody for taking their time and Changi's for the wonderful presentation. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.